He looked me straight in the face and said, "Wedding photography is the lowest form of photography." I mean, right in my face. I was like, "What the?" And I think that person's a dick, and I still think the person's a dick to this day, and I do not think that at all. But it did get me wondering because one, he didn't say it's not challenging enough for him. He didn't say it was overdone. He didn't say it was just not for him. Instead, he went lowest form. And I remember thinking, you've either never shot a wedding or you're so far up your own arse that you've lost touch with reality and are a douchebag. Because I'll be honest, it's so not true. Wedding photography is probably one of the most high pressure, high skilled, high stake jobs in this entire industry. One of, I've said, one of, will you come at me? One of. And yet somehow it's also become one of the most disrespected. So today I want to talk about it because at first I thought this was just like a flippant conversation. But then I was in this networking meeting for photographers. We were all stood together and people were like, wait, you shoot weddings? And like kind of scowled and people were like, oh. I wonder why people think this, where that mindset comes from, and what the real issues are. Because if you're a photographer who thinks this, you need to check yourself before you start ranking genres like it's some kind of creative class system. No one should be that level of a dickhead. But apparently you exist out there, some of you. Hopefully none of you who are listening to the Loud Lens. It's me, Candy. This is a great time to like, subscribe, and all the jangles that go with that. But let's get into this because frankly, so when this was said to me, I didn't just brush it off because comments like that don't come from nowhere. There isn't just one person being a knob, although in knowing more about this person, they are definitely a knob. There is a reflection of a wider belief system in the photography world, and there is a hierarchy. I kind of think it's a little unspoken, but it's very real. So at the top, from what I understand from chatting, I'm not saying this is necessarily my thoughts, but I do know this is said, so listen up. Fine art photographers, fashion photographers, commercial photographers, they're right at the top. They're the real photographers, I was told. And then somewhere in the middle, you've got portrait photographers, branding photographers, and then right down at the bottom, weddings, families, and anything seen as consumer facing. That's kind of what my friend said to me. Anything that involves normal people paying your money, I think that I would go. And that right there is the first issue. Like normal people, go check yourself. Uh, and I know you're gonna be like, I don't think that. Yes, you are probably one of the great people like myself who do not think like this. And yet there are people out there. I was amongst some people who at this networking group who were regarding themselves as fine art and they're like, wait, you shoot? And I was like, yes, I do. I'm like, "Mm." And I saw the sideways glances and I saw, check yourself. Oh. But I do think we need to unpack it because I don't think it's just about weddings. I think there's a lot of ego, validation, and security involved. And I think commercial versus emotional value plays a part. Photography that serves brands is often seen more valuable than photography that serves people. To get my head around it, I kind of think it's got something to do with the fact that brands often bring money, status, and perceived importance because they're a brand. Ooh. But weddings, they are emotional, very personal, very sentimental, and an industry that desperately wants to be seen as serious or artistic. Emotional work often gets dismissed as less important. Now, I am not talking about your art, your emotive portrait work. I'm talking about the weddings essentials because I don't want people to go, yeah, but all these thought-provoking reportage photos. No, 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 no. We're talking just about a genre here, okay? So even though ironically it's this work that probably matters most to real people, their wedding photos are probably the most important photos they'll ever have taken, other than maybe their babies, kids and stuff. It's kind of poo-pooed. And I will say when that guy said it to me, it sat with me for quite a while because I kind of felt really crappy that I was a wedding photographer at the time. And also I just know how hard it is to shoot a wedding. Like it's freaking hard. There's also this idea that anyone can shoot a wedding, and that is complete nonsense. What they actually mean is anyone can turn up a camera and pretend to be a wedding photographer. Because shooting a wedding properly, you work with completely unpredictable lighting all day, every day. You are managing people and their unpredictability. Timelines that are kept to, not kept to, ignored, added to, emotions, because there's a lot of those involved, family dynamics that you did not want to be involved in, but you had to be involved in, and you don't get to do do overs, there's no repeats, and you're documenting a once in a lifetime moment. So it is not easy. It is at best controlled chaos. And most photographers who look down on weddings would crumble under that pressure. Okay. I have done weddings where I have literally had to throw an ex girlfriend over my shoulder and remove her. Okay. I have done weddings where I have tried to clean blood out of a dress because the bride pricked herself on a thing, on a needle, and it bled all over a dress. I've done that. What else have I done at weddings? A band didn't show up, so I tried to organise a band for them. Luckily, my friend stepped in. Oh, a registrar kept getting their names wrong, and the bride looked like she was going to cry. So we had to go, oh, that's all right. We'll just do it as a do over. a videographer who forgot all of his camera batteries, and I had to then quickly jump on to do some short clips. I didn't have to, but I felt like I should do it. Content creator who failed to show up, and I've had the bride really upset, and I've been trying to get some content, but I don't have the equipment for it because I wasn't shooting hybrid at the time. I just had what I needed, but I did my best, as the kids say, and you just roll with it. There's emotions from bridesmaids and grooms and guests. Do you know who I think is the most problematic in my experience? And I mean this really lovely, and it's rare, but it's always a plus one who's never named on the invite. Like, in my experience, it's like someone's bought their guest and the bride doesn't know who they are, the groom doesn't know who they are, but they've given them a plus one, and sometimes that person can't handle their alcohol or yeah. I once went to a wedding where a bridesmaid walked off halfway through because she got bored. Because the attention wasn't on her. That was marvelous. Imagine having to deal with that. Yeah. Okay. And I do think weddings are really hard. I also think there is insecurity disguised as superiority with this one. And I know this is going to make some people feel uncomfortable. And I think that's because people look down on weddings because they just don't understand them. They don't feel confident in doing them. They've tried or they failed. And instead of saying, oh, that's not what I do, they're not my strength, they've gone, that's beneath me. And I think it's easier to dismiss something and then admit it challenges you or you struggle with it. I also think there is an industry issues. And if I want to keep it real, not all criticisms of wedding photography is baseless. There are issues, and if we ignore them, I think we are part of the problem. I think a lot of this comes from the fact that when we look at wedding photographers, in fact, you only have to go onto Facebook and see a bride talking about wedding photography, saying, "Oh, I need a wedding photographer," or blah blah blah, and everyone just like 50 million people jump on, and you're all like, "I'm not even adding my name to this." Wedding photography does have one of the lowest barriers to entry. People buy a camera, they maybe set up a Facebook page, maybe an Instagram thing, and then call themselves a wedding photographer. And suddenly you've got hundreds of people offering £300 wedding packages. And what does that do? It floods the market with very inconsistent quality. I think that impacts perception because everyone was repeatedly seeing bad work, poor experiences, missed moments, and they start associating it with the genre itself. And that does happen. I've seen that. And people have what they think is the value of wedding photography when it's not. I also think another one that comes on is that people always undervalue their work when it comes to wedding photography, and it does wind me up. The average wedding photographer, from what I understand, shoots between 8 and 12 hour days, managing clients emotionally, editing thousands of images, and carrying responsibility for irreplaceable memories. And yet they still have to justify their pricing, being told, oh, it's just photos. I think that level of devaluing hasn't happened in the same way, say, as in commercial spaces. And over time, like the lack of respect seeps into the industry itself. Like because wedding photographers go home like everybody else, but they go home after that long hours day, and then they have to back up and still do work when they get home. And they have all that stuff that they've been doing, thinking on their feet. It's not the same as doing headshots. Don't get me wrong. There's still some emotional baggage with that because people get a bit uncomfortable. But you're not having to run around a venue. You're definitely not having to find nice places or deal with, wedding guest dynamics. God forbid, like they don't feed you or they do feed you. There's that dynamic, and then or they tell you to go sit somewhere. I once at a wedding, once at a wedding, I was told that I could not consume any food that was not purchased or made on the premises. So when I inquired about the fact that A, the bride hadn't supplied a meal, and it's never like an issue for me, could I possibly purchase a meal then? They said, no, we don't do vendor meals here. You'd have to buy a full meal, which was £100. I'm like, I'm not making my bride pay that. So I brought some sandwiches and I went out to my car in their car park to eat. And they said, no, you can't eat anything on the premises. And I was like, I'm in my car. Nope, you need to leave. I had to walk my sandwiches to the roadside to eat. It was not worth the issue. But do you know what's even worse? I had a bottle of water in my bag. I wasn't even allowed to drink my water. I had to purchase water from them to drink. And I was like, this is ridiculous. Only a couple of quid, but I was like, this is ridiculous. And that's what I'm putting up with. So imagine you do all that and then you, you work till all day. On that wedding day, I will just say I felt really sorry for the videographer because they have this beautiful rolling landscape out the back of the venue. And the videographer took the bride and groom out there to get this beautiful golden sunset, which we had seen on all their marketing for the venue. And he got his ripped by the venue owner because not because the bride and groom were on the grass, but he was on the grass. He said, the bride and groom paid to use my grass. You did not move. And we were like, what the we thought this was a one-off, but apparently this is common at this venue, so we don't work there anymore. I won't tell you which one it is, but I think it's quite notorious. Anyway. God, it's like a little gossip there for you all, isn't it? I've got loads of these if you wanna know about venues. I could tell you about the time that, I got fed food from a guest plate instead of being given my own food. That was gross because it had their teeth mark in the chicken. Uh, I also think there is going back to this original podcast, actually, like, Candy, we were talking about the podcast, carry on. Let's go back to it. I also think a lot of photography starts at the same in the wedding industry. You know, there was a time when presets went crazy and everyone had the same presets, warm tones, desaturated greens, that kind of thing. And it became like just repeat, rinse, you know, like same poses, same edits, almost like the same Pinterest boards. And that's partly down to, you know, clients being driven to do it, but it also feeds in the idea that wedding photography can lack creativity. I mean, there was a point when, you know, if everything looks identical, people just assume it's identical. And I think at the time when the blurry photos that trend started, it was really unique to find a photographer who was doing that. Then when people realized that it was being done, now it's like not unique and it's now almost annoying to see it because everyone's doing it. I feel like people just didn't see the value in it. They know they at the time it was first being done, they're like, "Wow, this is amazing." And then, you know, people didn't like it. And I do think the presets thing caused an issue. However, I do think wedding photography is really high level work because what wedding photography actually requires is real technical skill to do it well, I'm going to say. Constant exposure adjustments, mixed lighting environments, fast decision making. Please do not get me started on tungsten and fluorescent light or on fluorescent and natural light in a venue, like, and then the DJ adds like patterned lasers or something. Emotion intelligence, like, you gotta have really good, like, people skills. You've gotta be able to read people, manage nerve, stress, family dynamics, knowing when to step in, when to disappear. I mean, I will say there was one time, a bride and groom had fractured relationships with what I don't know if it was the bride or the groom's sister. And they knew she was coming, but she was constantly making really snide remarks all the way through their wedding. And you see it was starting to get to the bride, and in the end, the mother of I'm sure it was a bride, sort of told her to simmer down and behave, and she refused and got louder. And in the end, like, she had to be removed. It was all because she was jealous. She was just jealous the day wasn't about her. And apparently she was like, I'm sure there's more to it, but I mean, from what I saw, it tracked that story. She was incredibly condescending to the bride constantly. Like, she was saying, I thought she was gonna lose weight for her wedding. Why does she still look like that? Or, ew, why did she do that? It's so shitty. Like, she should have done this. I told her this was gonna look awful. Like, come on, it's someone's wedding day. Think there's a high level of business skills required, like client communication, understanding contracts, expectation, handling complaints, pressure, and to be honest, the high emotion. Like, I shoot weddings and I still get super nervous about weddings. I know things can go wrong, and it's whether you can recover from it and deal with it or what. But I have had, you know, things go wrong at weddings. Not from my end, but I once had a kid drop his entire juice box onto me. Luckily, it only landed on my shoulder and it only hit a little bit of my camera. But imagine if it had hit my camera. I have backups, but you know, I've also been blocked in at a wedding. So I had my own parking space, and for whatever reason, a guest decided to block me in, so I couldn't leave for 3 hours because they were too drunk and couldn't remember where their keys were, and in the end, we had to get another person to remove their car. That was fun. I had another 3-hour drive home. Super I just sat in my car editing, backing up. It was okay, I could flip it, but, you know, you've got to act professional and not make a massive scene and try not to get the bride and groom involved. I also think I'm gonna tell you now, especially as I've got older, I can see middle age creeping up. It's a long day, and that has a physical and mental strain on you. You have to have stamina for this. There's no margin of error. It's continuous performance. My face hurts from smiling. I have backache sometimes. The feet on me hurt. Like, I am squatting down, kneeling down, jumping around. Like, this is a multidisciplinary expertise, and I'm not saying it's some of the others aren't. You know, festivals and all that stuff. But wedding photography is probably where you have to constantly be in people please mode. It is draining. I also think no, I'm gonna tell you now, when we start labeling something as low, it definitely creates division and creates ego driving silos where photographers look down on each other, undervalue certain skills, miss opportunities to learn. Because the reality is, a wedding photographer could walk into most genres and adapt. I'm not saying it can be amazing, so don't come for me, but not every photographer can work into a wedding and survive that. And I can actually say that with full chest. Okay, I became aware of a I'll be careful I say this, became aware of a photographer in my local area. Should I say that in my local area? No, maybe a bit further afield. Oh, I'm just gonna out myself here. Who took on some weddings, having had a career as a headshot photographer and doing, like, family portraits and stuff, and decided to do some weddings. The problem was he didn't understand that, A, it's all well and good to claim you can do it on one camera, but it's easier to do it on two. Now, he did not have the dreaded battery fail or the card corruption, but he was struggling to switch between his lenses to get the moments. There and he didn't understand about the contracts and, like, the client, like, didn't pay when he thought they were gonna pay, and it all got really messy, and then, like, was sort of thought he could use Flash. I remember this, he said, "Oh, I tried to use Flash in the ceremony." I was like, "You were lucky." I don't think I've ever been to any ceremony here in UK where I have ever been allowed to use Flash. I even want a dark room, I'm not allowed to use Flash. I even do you know once I tried to use constant light, so there was no Flash, and the registrar no, celebrant, I'm lying, celebrant said I wasn't allowed to because it was too distracting. I mean, ugh. Now I get Flash is distracting and sometimes it's constant light could be, but this was dark, 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 dark. So I think some people don't necessarily understand just how hard wedding photography is. It's not just point and shoot and hope for the best. You don't just spray and pray. I know there are photographers out there who do that and they are the lower end because they don't think about it as heavily as some of us do. And I get it. Some people just don't. I like to get as much bright in camera, but sometimes, I just have to hope and pray. Sometimes because the light can change. There's one venue here in Northampton. It's a guild hall. Beautiful registry office, got Rene Mackintosh windows. But what happens is they've tinted the windows with like this filmy perspex, so it makes everything kind of like yellowy toned, I think, and then they also like, if a bus goes past by the windows, everything just gets dark, and it's a main bus route, so every now and then, it will just go really dark, and it's also got yellow and red as the decor, so yay! And then yellow lights, so you got this incredibly strong yellow hue, and then the cool tones of the natural light, provided a bus isn't going past, so and you can't use any other lighting check, so I put a white balance check in straight away, and then just hope for the best. Just and I have to individually edit those photos because it's not always great then. I strongly believe that not every photographer can walk into a wedding shoot and do it justice for the full day. It's a bit different when I did wildlife and fashion. You might remember that with Phil Gould in Estonia when I did that. But wedding photography is definitely like a tough gig. But I want to be really clear because it did irk me when I was talking about this and I put it on my Instagram. So go find me on Instagram at Khandie Photo. There is no lowest form of photography. Only photographers with limited perspective, as far as I'm concerned. Because if you think a genre is beneath you, you've already capped your growth. That's you done. Because the best photographers respect the craft across the board. They understand different doesn't mean inferior, commercial doesn't mean better, emotional doesn't mean less skilled. And more importantly, I don't think good photographers need to tear down anyone else to validate themselves. I just think only dickheads and douchebags do that. So I wanna know, have you ever looked down on type photography or have you ever heard someone looking down because or have you ever judged one? Let's be honest, it's safe space. Tell me anonymously. It's cool. I wanna have this conversation because this industry does not need more hierarchy. It definitely needs like more awareness. Um, I don't know, like maybe it's time that we stop being a knobhead and just start embracing photography and like I will say I do get why people think wedding photography is so low because if you did go onto Facebook now, in fact, let me just go onto Facebook now. I'm gonna be that dick. Let me go onto Facebook now. Let me go into one of the wedding groups. Tick, 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 wedding groups. Wedding, there we go. Yeah, here we go. Let me find it. Won't take me long. Ah, here we are. I'm looking for a wedding photographer. And let me have a look. She's got 98 people, okay? Replying. Here's one. I'm looking for a photographer for a twilight wedding in blah 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 blah. She wants a twilight one. Please ensure you have proof of twilight photography. There's 89 comments. Let me just pick one person. Okay, so she's asked for proof of twilight. So that means shooting in the dark, essentially. So I'm just gonna have a quick look. This one person's put their website up. When it eventually loads. Yeah, I can see no proof of twilight. Maybe I've missed it. Maybe no, that's underexposed. That's not twilight. That's so naughty, isn't it? Yeah, oh, that is a Chat GPT advert. You can tell that. Oh, that's yeah. Who is using Chat GPT to create their posters? Here you go. Just to talk about it, my prices start from £200 up to £700. This includes a USB and an online gallery. Wow. There we go. Ooh, yeah, I'm not sure I feel that. But here's my one. Um, oh, here. I've only shot Twilight here. This is what I've done. That's not Twilight. That is you using Splash to me. Yeah, okay. I'm not gonna go into that. So for me, yeah, I can see why people might assume because it seems to be like one of the lowest, like I said, one of the lowest barriers of entry. But who knows? Who absolutely knows? Because for me, I could probably say like what the other place is probably portrait photography because people do just get a camera and decide they're gonna do portraits. But I think weddings is the one that's really like documented as being the one that people really go after. But to the guy who said that it was the lowest form of photography, just go F yourself. I don't make it on my podcast. I'm not here for that. I don't like that mentality. I certainly don't like the way that attitude sits. So yeah, there you go. This has been the Loud Lens. I've been Khandie. I need to stop looking at these Facebook posts because some of these scare me. Like, I just want to reach out and go, how are you operating? Tell me how you've managed to run a career charging £200 for a full day wedding. I just want to know who you are. Just like tell me how you've done it. I would love to see your breakdown. I'm not hating on you. I just want to know. I'm curious. I'm curious. It concerns me you want to shoot that, but I'm not looking down you. I'm just saying, hey, how are you doing? Maybe I am looking a bit down because that seems silly. But anyway, okay, from the hypocritical me. Bye.